In 3, 2, hello, you are listening to Finding My Way. Today, we'll be covering the Bachelor of Science Chemical Engineering, offered at USC through the Viterbi School of Engineering. Here to tell us more about it is Carl Kohnke, a junior at USC from San Mateo, California. Carl, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Chemical engineering is one of my favorite things, and hence why I'm in it. So, I'm super excited to talk to you about it today.
I'm excited to learn more about it. I can just feel your passion radiating off immediately. Let's do it. So, Carl, why did you choose chemical engineering?
Yeah, so for me it was a bit of a strange story. I'd say most people probably pick it because they like chemistry, which we'll talk about later. But for me it was a little bit strange because I kind of just chose it on a whim and ended up really liking it. But yeah, it was mostly just a random choice. I thought it looked cool and said, well, I don't know what I want to do, so we can try this, and if I don't like it, I'll switch out.
So when you were in high school and you were looking at all the lists of degrees that were being offered, you were just like, chemical engineering sounds interesting, let's do that.
Yeah, well, I knew that I wanted to study something in STEM. I've always loved science and math, but I'd say that when I was going through it, it really stood out to me. It was that and also prospective salaries, without a doubt. It was definitely on the higher end of the list, so that was another draw once I started looking into it a little more.
Okay. And then, did you have a previous background in chemistry?
I had definitely done a lot of chemistry and biology stuff. In my classes, I definitely catered a lot of my high school classes towards that end, but I didn't have any actual experience from that front other than just doing random experiments on my own.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you were looking at all these majors that were being offered, you ended up choosing USC for that. Mm-hmm. What was special about USC and what brought you here?
Yeah, for me, mostly because it was one of the better schools I got into. I wanted to stay on the West Coast, so USC was great. And I was also definitely looking for a great balance of a great engineering school while also a great social life. That's a lot of things that most engineering schools can't offer, unfortunately. So when I found USC, or when I was accepted to USC, it was pretty much right off the bat that I decided to choose to go here because it's just such a great balance of excellent education while still having the opportunity to go to some awesome social events and being here in LA.
What kind of social activities do you do on campus?
So on campus, I'm part of the American Institute of Chemical Engineers. I am one of the vice presidents, so we do a lot of social and professional and academic events all together. We learn from each other and do some really fun stuff. I'm planning a dodgeball event with, we call it AKI, the acronym. So yeah, that's a great way to meet your fellow chemical engineers, meet some older people, be a mentor to some younger people. And yeah, so that's a great one. I'm also part of Theta Tau, which is the engineering professional society here on campus, which is always a great time. So yeah, those are my main involvements here on campus.
Professional fraternities sound very interesting. What really sets it aside from a social fraternity?
For me, it's mostly that everybody's kind of in the same boat as me, and it's obviously I don't really have any experience with social fraternities, so I can't really compare them too much, but I do feel that it is a very inclusive space. We are co-ed, we're very pro-diversity, which is really awesome. You get to meet a lot of different people that you might not otherwise, which is definitely one of the big draws, and it's just a great place to feel a sense of community, because in engineering it's sometimes a little difficult to find somebody who's just as social as you when you're an extroverted individual. So yeah, I'd say that's a big reason why I joined.
It's really cool. How did you hear about Theta Tau?
So Theta Tau was something that I learned about actually when I was back in high school, specifically the USC one, because a good friend of mine who was on the wrestling team mentioned it to me when I was first applying to USC.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were on the wrestling team. What other extracurricular activities did you do in high school?
Yeah, so I was big on the wrestling team. I was team captain for 2 years. Other than that, I was a scout. I was able to make Eagle. So that was a really fun time. I ran a community service project, or it was more of just a service project in general. We were doing rehabilitation for barn owls and bluebirds in my area. Other than that, I mainly just messed around in high school. I mean, I'd say for most people that make it to USC, like high school wasn't something that they spent too much of their time on unless they did all APs, which I didn't. So yeah, I spent a lot of my time messing around. But yeah, those were the two big ones, mostly wrestling and Boy Scouts.
Interesting. So you think those were the main things that set you apart as an applicant?
I'd say definitely like being an Eagle Scout set me apart a lot. It's a great opportunity to display your leadership. I mean, after 11 or 12 years in the Scouts and having countless leadership opportunities, it's definitely something that you can talk about. You're able to collaborate with others, lead others, and such, and you're also able to self-sustain. One of the main requirements of getting Eagle is being able to survive in the wilderness. So
just learn how to be an overall badass.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. That was the thing that I wrote my college app essay about, was surviving out in the wilderness for a couple of days, which was a really interesting and not so fun experience.
What was that experience like?
Very cold.
Yeah.
That was the general gist of it. Yeah. So if you want me to tell a short story about that,
let's hear it.
We had. My friend and I were doing a little wilderness survival thing, and on the first day, we built a shelter up against the tree, and we go mess around for a few hours, and we come back as it's coming to sundown, and we try to get into our little shelter, and it's just absolutely infested with spiders. I don't know about you, but I'm not a huge fan of spiders, so we decided to sleep on a tarp for the night, which we hadn't brought many supplies, because that was the general idea, is don't bring many supplies. So sleeping on a tarp in 50-degree weather was not too fun, but it was a great, I guess, character building experience. I don't know how to put that in any brighter light.
I mean, it must have been a great experience if that's what you ended up writing your essay on.
Yeah, it was very fun.
Yeah. So you did all those extracurriculars, and you said that you didn't take any APs in high school.
I didn't take all APs,
Okay.
but I did take STEM APs. I took 2 math APs, 2 science APs, and that's it.
Okay. And if you don't mind me asking, what was your GPA like in high school when you first transferred?
Yeah, so I had a almost perfect unweighted GPA. It was like a 3.9 something.
Nice.
And I had a 4.3 something weighted. I didn't take too many classes. I decided not to overload myself too much my later years. Mostly focused on being part of like a little biotechnology lab at my school, which I was very fortunate to have. But yeah, other than that, that's generally how high school went.
Do you think that biotech lab was what kind of started this passion into STEM and to wanting to pursue it later on in college?
Yeah, it was definitely one of my first experiences with running a lot of labs, writing lab reports almost every day. And I realized that I really liked the idea of discovering new things and like applying knowledge that I learned in my classes to something that I can actually see that's tangible right in front of me. I can, look at something and be like, hey, I know exactly why this is happening now. So I always thought that was really cool. I definitely, me personally, whenever I see something I don't understand, I always want to, look into it and read up on it. So it was definitely a very enlightening experience, that along with my math and chemistry classes.
Sounds like the perfect engineering mindset to have in high school.
It's definitely something that if you are in high school and you have that mindset, I would consider engineering or really anything in STEM.
Okay, very cool. So you said that you chose chemical engineering because of the salary, but what kind of information did you really have on it beforehand and before coming to USC?
Yeah, so like I said, yeah, salary was definitely a big one, but I can't say I really had that much experience with engineering, didn't really know what it was. I just knew that I liked applying things. I liked STEM subjects in high school, and I kind of fell sort of victim to the, I guess I can explain this now. A lot of people choose chemical engineering because they think it's a chemistry degree. It is not a chemistry degree. It's an engineering degree. There's more physics than chemistry. But a lot of people fall, I guess, into that thinking that chemical engineering will be a chemistry degree. That was part of my decision. I loved chemistry. I still do. We do have chemistry classes, and they're really great. But yeah, that was another main reason. But yeah, I can't say I had too much information regarding the subject. I mean, I knew a couple people at USC who were studying engineering already. They were mechanical engineers, though. So yeah, I mostly just waited until college to learn more about it, other than the projects that I had done in Scouts or just in general.
That's crazy to me, though, that a chemical engineering degree wouldn't have as much chemistry as everybody would think. How does that exactly work? What makes it the chemical engineering degree then at the end of the day?
Yeah, so I think a better label for chemical engineering would be process engineering. Most of our studies have to do with like the movement of heat, the movement of fluids, and basically scaling up the reactions. The way I like to put it is a chemist is going to discover something new. They're going to make this much of it, right? They're going to make a few grams of something brand new. The job of a chemical engineer is to fill up 16 warehouses with it. So there's a lot of very interesting and unique problems that come with scaling things up. For example, if you have something like an exothermic reaction, something that generates heat, on a small scale, it's going to affect almost nothing. You probably won't even notice it unless you know the chemistry behind it. Now, if you're making several tons of it an hour, that equipment's going to become very high pressure, very hot, and you obviously have some safety problems there if you're not, taking the right precautions. So that's mostly what chemical engineering is. A lot of chemical engineers go into safety. There's a ton of other career paths, though. I'd say it's a very versatile major. I'm going into something almost completely different in the long run. But yeah.
What are you going into?
Me personally, I'm going into material science, materials engineering. I'm going to be pursuing my master's very soon with the progressive degree program here. If you're not familiar with USC's progressive degree program, it's something that you can pursue your master's degree along with your bachelor's degree. So I'll be graduating in 4.5 years total with 2 degrees. Which is really exciting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm pursuing more material science. I found that I really like the math and the chemistry behind that. It's definitely a little bit more involved on the chemistry side than chemical engineering is. So yeah, that was a big draw for me, and chemical engineering is a great path into that. Another thing is that it's very uncommon to find material science or materials engineering undergrads. So that's another reason why chemical engineers typically feed into that as well.
What is material science? Like, if you were to say it in layman's terms, what would it be?
So pretty much everything that you see around you needs some sort of process to create. The paint on this wall, the treatment that went on this paper, whatever treated this wood, whoever came up with the alloy that this table... Oops, sorry for tapping. Whoever came up with the alloy that makes the legs for this table, etc., or maybe the composites that make up a fighter jet or whatever, right? All of those things need a lot of deep research into making sure that they meet safety requirements, that they can hold and withstand the stresses that are going to be a part of whatever their use is. Or maybe they're a specialty material, like material scientists might go into making like a capsule for medicine that only opens up and releases in a certain part of your body based on the pH of where it's reaching. So, I can go on forever into electronics and computers or whatever, but it really is just another wide tree of fields.
Yeah.
But it's mostly just chemical engineering, but for solids. I like to say that material science is like if chemical engineering and mechanical engineering had a baby, it would be material science, materials engineering.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right. I want to go back to that, but I want to backtrack for a second.
Yeah.
When we look at the actual class load that comes in with the chemical engineering degree at USC, what does that look like, and what do most of these classes look like for you?
Yeah, so one thing to note is that you should be definitely confident about doing engineering if you want to do chemical engineering, because it is one of the highest course loads that you can take. However, it's totally worth it. You start off mostly learning about the basics that really any engineer will learn, which is like mass and energy balances, learning just the general how to apply, things that go in have to come out at some point. It's just like a more advanced version of, stuff that goes up must come down. So yeah, you start with that, then you start talking about the movement of heat, or just like how heat affects system. That's called the study of thermodynamics. You start learning about some more complex stuff like how to literally measure the randomness of something, or that's a really simple way to talk about entropy. If you know what I'm
Mhm.
talking about, then please don't come at me.
I got you.
But yeah, so you go into that, you start learning about fluid dynamics, you start looking more like analytically about how fluids might move through a system, and of course that's applicable pretty much anywhere. You take a lot of chemistry courses, so I don't want to make it seem like we have no chemistry. There is a lot of organic chemistry, physical chemistry being the physics behind chemistry. There's more thermodynamics there as well.
See, but thermodynamics is something that I've heard from almost every engineer at USC is one of the most difficult topics and difficult classes that they've taken here. How is it for you?
Yeah, so I mean, me personally, I really like thermodynamics, so it wasn't so hard for me as maybe others might make it seem. However, it is difficult. It's definitely for a chemical engineer here at USC, it's like the first real hard class that you go into, so it can be very daunting. But yeah, I'd say it's very fun, especially if you like learning about like predicting things. Thermodynamics is a great way to like predict the outcome of your experiments. Especially, I'm in my second thermodynamics class right now, the chemistry version, and it's I'm learning a lot of really cool things about how you can do one experiment and find the answers to a completely unrelated different experiment, and without even doing it. And so yeah, there's a lot of great applications for that. And then furthering through it, you start learning about separations. How to separate two things from each other is very important in chemical engineering. I believe like 4% of the world's energy is used in distillation, which is a separations process that we learn about. And then moving on from there, you start learning about how to utilize software to help you out with this. We have process design classes, controls classes, where you learn about how to really create these systems, how to simulate them, how to know what to expect. So yeah, that's the
cool.
most of it. And then of course you end with the senior project.
What's the senior project?
So the senior project changes pretty often, but usually you're just creating a entire chemical plant or something of the sort, where you're making something of your choice, and then you'd obviously spend a long time doing that, likely with here at USC you'd do it with a group of your peers, and those peers will probably be the people that you've done your labs with for the previous 4 years. We have a lot of labs, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you're mainly just creating a chemical process to, I guess, prove that you're proficient in being able to make really whatever you want.
And is this doing it all on your own? So like you come up with your own idea of a chemical process that you want to create and executing on that, or are there certain guidelines that you have to hit?
Yeah, so I'm not so sure about the answer to that question, unfortunately. I believe usually you're given something unless you really, really want to do something else.
Okay.
But yeah, as far as I know, most people are just fine with getting whatever they're assigned. But if you'd like to go more difficult, you're more than welcome.
I'm sure all the engineers that are listening are like, give it more difficult.
Yeah.
So I actually want to help everybody out that is listening who is an engineer who might be afraid of thermodynamics. Maybe you can share some wisdom on things that you've done to make the process a little bit easier, and any advice that you can give them to be successful in that class.
Sure. Yeah. Well, the one thing that's really great about USC is they offer so many resources. So for my thermodynamics class, we had 2 absolutely amazing TAs. Going to discussion is not mandatory, but I'd say it should be, because going to discussion is going to be a huge help for you. Definitely studying with your peers. Trying to take on any engineering degree alone is going to be a much more difficult task than you might have expected. So finding a support group amongst your major is definitely a really good idea to do initially. And then there's also tutors, especially for the earlier classes in chemical engineering when you're first getting situated. For thermodynamics, we had a great tutor as well. So I'd say just mostly utilizing those resources. Obviously, like reading the textbook, but that goes for really any major ever. So yeah, I'd say mostly just utilizing USC's resources. It's really not as bad as you might think once you get into the groove of things. Usually it's the first shock of that first midterm. Everybody gets a 30%. You're going, oh no, what am I doing here? But yeah, it definitely gets better from there. Everybody who decides to stick around gets better at it. So yeah.
And what thoughts go through your head? Like, how do you mentally stay in it when you get 30% on exams and you see, like, after all of that work that you put in, it's like, I'm not getting what I wanted it to be.
Yeah. I mean, the main thing to keep in mind is these tests are curved. Like, the professor isn't going to let their entire class fail because it looks horrible for them. So, yeah, you know, there are going to be some tests where, you know, a 50% is an A. Right, so don't get too freaked out by getting a low score. Everybody scores, you know, low at some point. Like nobody's gonna have perfect all the way through unless maybe they transferred from MIT. But yeah, no, definitely don't worry about it too much. The more you stick around, the more you study, the more you find your support group, like I mentioned, you'll realize that you're getting a lot better at this, and that worry or that imposter syndrome is going to start to disappear.
Just trust the process. Keep going forward.
Yeah, it really is. Just trust the process. Don't give up. Obviously, like, you know, if you really feel miserable about it, like it is a very hard major. It's not abnormal to think about switching. But you really, when that thought comes, you really want to, like, look at your values, look at what you really want to learn, and if the pros of chemical engineering that the other majors don't have are something that are still very important to you, still top of the line, or still top of the list kind of things that you're worried about, then you should stick with it because it gets better. And it's something that you'll really enjoy doing when you start being able to really apply these things to real world things. You'll be able to start seeing what you're creating and you go, oh, I did that. You know, it's really cool once you start getting in those lab classes too, and you can really start, you know, creating tangible things.
Is that your favorite part about it? The fact that you actually get to create real things?
Yeah, I'd say one of the big things that I really love engineering is just like how hands-on it is. I'd say chemical engineering is very hands-on, but not literally hands-on. The reason why that is because so many things in this major are poisonous, acidic, explosive.
Nice.
Yeah, it sounds awesome, but you know, hands off. Like, but once everything's running, you make sure those safety glasses are on. But yeah, no, it's a great time being in lab, especially if you are able to find that support group early and you have a great lab group. Obviously, lab reports are not the most fun thing in the world, but it is a great way to learn more about real-world applications. So yeah, I'd say it's definitely a great plus to taking any engineering major, but for me especially chemical engineering, because that's where a lot of that real chemistry comes in.
And what is the workload really like? How many hours a day are you really putting into schoolwork and always studying for this?
Yeah, so personally, I get a lot of roasting for being a absolute tryhard. So I spend a lot more time than I'd say like maybe a person who has the correct mindset might.
What's the correct mindset?
Giving yourself a social life. But yeah, I'd say I probably spend, this semester I wake up around, 10 a.m., so not too bad, and I'll work until, maybe midnight or 1 a.m.
Okay.
But I will have done something fun in the process. I'm not grinding the entire time unless I have a test the next day or something of the sort. I mean, you will inevitably pull an all-nighter or two a semester, but most majors have to go through that anyways, so
Yeah.
it's not like a huge standout kind of thing. I'd say it isn't necessarily that there's a lot of work, because every major has a lot of work. It's the level of difficulty. So you are definitely forced into collaborating with your friends. So again, I'm going to say it for the millionth time, find a support system, because that is going to be absolutely a huge part of your experience, especially here at USC.
I love that. Do you feel like Theta Tau gives you that outlet in a way to have that social experience that you crave after working so hard throughout the week?
Yeah, I'd say both AICHE, like I mentioned earlier, the American Institute of Chemical Engineers, and Theta Tau have been, great support systems. Like, everybody's in the same boat,
Yeah.
So, we all understand what we're going through. Yeah, make it sound so bad. It's not that bad, but...
No, I mean, I think it's one of those things that if you're really committed to it and you're excited about what you're doing, you just have to put in the work for it.
But, yeah, I mean, if your goal coming out of college is to, make a lot of money creating really cool things that are science related. You know, you will need to have a certain level of grit to get through it, but yeah, I wouldn't say that like it's impossible to get a social life. It's by no means impossible, but you know, joining clubs is going to be very important, especially early in your college career. You know, just forming friendships. Like, don't waste too much of your freshman year studying. That's a mistake that I made. I was still obviously able to catch up and make a ton of friends by joining Theta Tau and Aki and other things as well. But you know, you spend your freshman year and your sophomore year before you get absolutely slammed by junior and senior year. Spend that time, you know, going out and exploring the city that you're in and just like making friendships, forming bonds. It's definitely really important that you find that early in your college career because then you can continue on afterwards and you'll find that those friends that you've made in your major or just in engineering in general will also be very helpful when it comes time that you have a homework question that you have spent 5 hours on and cannot figure out, and you send it to one of your friends and you go, what am I doing here? And they can maybe explain it to you. But yeah, it's definitely, again, really important that you make some friends in your major.
Make sure that you have a real good support system of people around you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And it's not that difficult to do as long as you go up to your classmates and say hi. Like, most people here, especially in the early years, are eager to make new friends. Mm-hmm. So one thing that really sets USC apart is how social the engineers are. So don't think of it like this is a TV show and all the engineers like nerds, you know. No,
I've seen you guys at the Theta Tau house.
Okay,
you guys are not nerds.
Okay,
you have some fun.
Yeah. I mean, we are nerds to a certain extent, and we're proud of it. But but yeah, we do like to have fun. So yeah, it's a good time.
Good. It's a work hard, play hard mentality.
Yeah, sure.
Nice. As far as when you get this degree and you're done with it, do most people end up getting some higher level certification, like a master's or PhD, or do most people go and get a job right afterwards?
Yeah, so I'd say that in my major, just like most others, like most people are just going to get their bachelor's and they're going to go into industry. And then if they do that, after about 2 years of working, they'll become a professional engineer by taking the exam to do so.
What's the exam?
I don't know. But I know there's an exam that's just like somewhat chemical engineering stuff. It's mostly just like, do you know what you were doing the past 4 years? So it's not. I've never seen somebody fail it. And that exam lets you stamp things, and of course that makes you more valuable to companies. You can get paid more. But I'd say like there are certain engineerings like electrical and chemical and a couple others that are great feeders into graduate school. Like I mentioned, I'm going to be doing my master's and I'm thinking about doing my PhD. So and that's very common with a lot of the Chem E's who got into like research fairly early. A lot of people fall in love with research in their freshman or sophomore year. And that's another good thing is if you can't find an internship your freshman year, which you probably can't unless you're absolutely stellar, go do research. It's a great way to get into real life STEM. But yeah, I'd say that the career path is primarily going into industry, but it's a absolutely excellent feeder into higher level academia.
And if you end up actually going to the workforce right afterwards, say with just the bachelor's degree, no master's, no other higher level of education,
sure.
Do you know what that salary range would be looking like? Yeah,
so it really depends on what route you want to take. I'd say it really depends on where you live. I mean, if you go out to, I don't know, Montana, you're probably going to be paid less than if you're here in California. But, and it again ends up being around what industry you decide to choose on. But I'd say most engineers within about 2 years of graduating are going to be nearing or already above the six-figure salary range.
Okay.
If you decide to become a senior engineer, you'll get paid more than that, and then if you decide to go into engineering management, you'll get paid even more than that. So, I mean, it's not uncommon to see some of the engineers who have been in industry for, a decade or so making like well above 200K. So it can be a very great way to make a lot of money fast. So, I mean, engineers are definitely compensated for all their work. So, yeah, I'd say I guess to put it into perspective, I have an upcoming internship this summer, and I'm going to be paid on the order of 45 to 50 an hour.
Wow.
So that's a good way to like see that that may not be the most common, I guess, salary range for an intern, but it's attainable, and you can make a hell of a lot of money being an engineer.
Yeah, it sounds like it. $200,000. That's not bad. And then going into it just as a summer before you even get your degree, around $50 an hour.
Yeah, that's
very exciting.
And of course, like being in industry, like you're also going to get benefits and stocks and whatever depending on where you work. So that salary isn't. It's just the baseline. It's not everything you're getting. You're going to get a lot more worth out of it than just that salary.
Yeah. You also said that a lot of engineers go into multiple different fields of industries with the degree. What are some of the more common ones that you see people going into?
Yeah, so for chemical engineering, obviously there's going to be the materials people like me who are going to go into semiconductors or aerospace or really anything of the sort, manufacturing. Could go into research, but materials is going to be mostly just like making solid things to dumb it down as far as you can go. There's also going to be pharma, which is huge. Like biotech is a big one for chemical engineers because one, the pay is really high, and a lot of people come into chemical engineering and then they find that they really like biology, or organic chemistry. So that's a great route for people who like those subjects. That's not me. Oil and gas is obviously a huge one, but that along with that also comes sustainable energy. So like for me, I worked in gas the past summer, and I'm going to be working for an energy company next summer. And my goal there is to be a part of those companies when they already have decided to start moving into sustainable energy. But of course, the idea there would be find your grounding in those companies, and as they start investing big time into sustainable energy, you're front row, Sustainable energy, like I said, is a big one, and I'm probably missing like 50 others. Obviously, nanotechnology is going to be a big one as well, especially recently. So, the list goes on, really, but yeah.
Do you think that because you're a USC engineering student, you are set apart a little bit from everybody else that's going into those industries and are trying to get those internships?
Yeah, definitely. Because, there's two main things that are going to set you apart from going to USC. One is we are, I believe, ranked 13th in the nation. That might be wrong, but I know we're top 20. So obviously having a USC engineering bachelor's is absolutely monumental. It's an amazing school. If you get into it, go. So yeah, automatically having that on your resume is a big deal. Also, the Trojan Network. It's such a huge school, and we're such a brotherhood around USC that if you reach out to somebody on LinkedIn and they have USC, they're graduating from USC, you're at USC, you reach out to them, they're most likely going to help you out. So yeah, I'd say being a part of the Trojan Network is huge, and it's definitely it definitely helped me get my first job, and I wouldn't be surprised if it helps me again later.
And how do you do it? You just find somebody on LinkedIn in a field that you're interested in and just blindly message them and they're willing to help you out?
Yeah, you could cold email people if you happen to find or know their email. You could reach out to them on LinkedIn, which is a great way to do it. Also, a lot of the clubs you might be in might have access to their alumni. For example, AICI and Theta Tau both have access to our alumni, which is very useful for people getting internships and possibly even full-time offers. I know for AICI it has. So yeah, it's a great way to really find your way into something, and you can also get some really great advice from those alumni as well. So yeah, again, Trojan Network. Absolutely huge.
I love that. Everybody talks so much about the Trojan family and the Trojan Network and how the connections really do set you apart, but it's also something that's not talked about enough, in my opinion, in the actual classes. I feel like,
yes.
At least me coming from global health, we weren't really introduced to as many alums as I possibly would have liked to.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like nobody really taught me how to navigate through the Trojan Network and how to reach out to alums until I took my first Marshall class.
Yeah.
So the fact that you're giving some tips on how to do that, joining those clubs and everything, I think is a very beneficial thing for a lot of incoming students.
Yeah, and if you're already in USC, one thing to keep your eye out on is there are these things called Trojan Talks, where companies come and just, talk about what they do, and you get to network with them after. And there's also a ton of alumni events where there's a bunch of recruiters hidden in there somewhere, and even so, you still get to do some great networking. And I've gone to a lot of those events and made a lot of great connections, and these people are very nice, like if you reach out to them, for the most part, they won't ghost you, and they'll help you out in the long run. So, keep your eye out on those events that you see posted on, the Viterbi website or whatever. But, the USC is really looking out for us. You just have to play your part in, following those opportunities instead of just, doing nothing.
Yeah, take advantage of it as much as you can.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you this. If you were, say, the new director of Viterbi and you have complete power over the program, you can change it any way you want. What is one way you would like to improve the program?
Bigger chemical engineering building. I would probably move our separations class till after our heat and mass class, just because it seems a little out of order. That probably means nothing to somebody who's not a chemical engineer, but there's a couple of things about the course plan that are a little strange. But yeah, I'd say that it's a really well set up. You might there's not too many professors, so you might end up getting the same professor twice. I really like most of the professors in Chem E, so I don't have a problem with that. Some people might. I'd say overall they do a great job. I would like to see more lab involvement, though we do have quite a bit of lab involvement, and we're able to do a lot of lab classes in other majors as well, to get credit for our major. So there's a lot of really exciting stuff you can do. I wouldn't say that I'd make too many changes. I would like to see more involvement from companies that aren't oil and gas coming to recruit at USC. I mean, albeit we do have a lot of biotech, we do have a lot of materials, but they're kind of hidden, and you have to really look for them. So I'd say those are the big things that I would try to include, but they still do a fairly good job at that. But you might have to put a little bit of effort in on your own, okay. But that's to be expected.
Yeah, that makes sense. My final question before we let you go, and thank you so much for this, is if you could talk to freshman year Carl, who just got accepted into USC, and he's about to get started on this whole new journey, what kind of advice would you give him to be successful at the school and to have an overall very well-rounded experience?
I'd say, if I was talking directly to myself, I would say probably don't worry about your GPA as much as you do. Any engineer with a GPA at or above average is going to find an absolutely amazing job coming out of college, especially at USC. So I spent a lot of my time freshman and sophomore year grinding out my grades, making sure I got absolutely perfect scores. But it's really not necessary. You really should spend your time. Obviously you should aim to get good grades, but you should spend a lot of your time also, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, finding a support system. We've got something going on outside, but yeah, I'd say the biggest thing would be go have fun. Your first 2 years are your real big opportunity to do so, until, those real big and real hard classes start absolutely slamming you. But there's that, and then just make sure that you have the basics down. A lot of your earlier classes will have a lot of random advanced stuff thrown in. You're going to learn that again later, so just get good at the basics. I'd say that's a huge thing to take away from it is just focus on the core concepts that you're being taught, because those are the things that are going to keep being used over and over and over, right? But yeah, other than that, I think there's not really much else to say. Just get ready, because it is a tough major. I mean, there's no sugarcoating that. It's one of the hardest, but it's really fun. And if you're here for it, then you're gonna feel really rewarded once you're a couple years in.
Love that. So always make sure you have a very strong foundation anywhere you're going.
Yeah.
And Carl, I want to say thank you so much for taking some time out of your incredibly busy Chem E schedule to sit, talk with us, and give us a little bit of insight into what goes into your major and your daily life. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I had a great time. Chem E is really, really fun if you like STEM stuff. So yeah, think about it.
Yeah. Everybody out there, think about it.
But yeah, it's really enjoyable if you're here for it. So.
Great.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I had a great time.
It was great. All right, thanks, Carl.